first thing of business that you have as an IT leader is to keep me out of jail. That's number one. That has to do with compliance and policy and regulations and all of that. Number two, you need to reduce my costs. You got a budget. In fact, today you're going to have a lesser budget because of all of these newer technologies they say are offering you some capabilities. So here you are, you're the IT manager out in industry, and you're saying, oh my gosh, I'm already 5 layers or 5 versions behind an SAP updates because I'm just don't have the workforce to be deploying all these things. Now this virtualization thing comes along, whereby it's easy to press a button and take a snapshot. And an IT administrator is going to be greatly, your IT guy who runs around from office to office fixing problems every day, he's going to say, good, I finally got this computer down to a really well-provisioned, properly provisioned. It is healthy. It is golden. This is good. What are you going to do with virtualization? With your if you're running this in a VM environment, I'm going to take a snapshot of it so I have a backup of this golden, well-provisioned VM. Heck, I'm going to take 2 of them just to be sure. By the time you do that all day long, you're going to have a lot of VMs associated along the side. My point is that there is going to be something called VM sprawl, something that the industry is calling VM sprawl, where there's just a proliferation of VMs. How are you, the IT guy again, going to be provisioning this VM tomorrow or next week when it comes time that you need this thing to back up because your main server went down? You're going to pull a VM out of your pocket, right, and get your services back up. Well, if it hasn't been in operation for 24 hours or a week or a month, because you've got really robust hardware perhaps, you're going to bring this VM on, but it hasn't for a month, has not seen updates from the manufacturer, from Microsoft has not been pushing down updates. McAfee has not been able to get its updates, security update. It is out of date. It is stale. So you need to, on a regular basis, somehow bring these VMs onto a system in the back room, offline, reprovision them, take them off. All day long, do that. For all of the neat benefit of taking the snapshots of VMs, now you've got this problem of VM sprawl because you got to keep these things current for them to hold their value of being easily replaceable on a moment's notice. One solution at any rate, and that doesn't require a lot of resources, is going to be the ability to crack open a VM image, scan it, provision it, update it, and put it and close it up and put it back, all while it's sitting on a disk drive, not being operational. So the benefits that are definitely needed in this area the capabilities that are needed are to do that, to have APIs to do that. It turns out that VMware and a couple of others are providing some APIs or developing some APIs, and they'll soon become available. Some of these are already available, but the advanced techniques and advanced leaders in providing some of the capabilities of doing this are going to find this to be a pretty valuable tool, a management tool to be providing. Unfettered monitoring. This is another pillar. This is the third pillar. Unfettered monitoring. We had some interesting discussions with Microsoft in the industry last year about this time with their introduction of Vista. And specifically on 64-bit systems, there are kernel patch protection mechanisms built into it in Microsoft's attempt to strengthen the operating system. And I applaud their efforts, by the way. We might have been somewhat critical of them, and I think we came to some healthy dialogue in the press and so on, and they really listened to the industry players, not just McAfee, but others, and really provided some additional capabilities for providing access to the kernel that we currently have today in XP. But in 64-bit Vista, for example, the security mechanisms that Microsoft is offering is restrictive, and we can't apply the same security techniques tomorrow in Vista 64 that we are able to do today. But as I said, I really applaud Microsoft for listening to us in the industry, and then they provided some additional APIs to do this kind of access. But this unfettered monitoring is essential for us to stay one step ahead, or at least on an equal footing with the bad guys. So now in the consideration of virtualization, the ability to have unfettered access to the system provides a plethora of really interesting opportunities that come about. What I've shown here is a picture, of course, that describes Actually, it happens to show the Model 1, which the one model which has the which has the VM monitor, the VMM layer, but it can equally be applied to a hypervisor type of environment. So what I'm suggesting is we have the typical model shown here with a couple of VMs and guest OSs sitting on there, running their own applications, independent of each other, sitting on the hardware, each with their own view to the hardware. And security OS, security VM sitting over here, the security applications going in. And what I had suggested earlier as far as leveraging security applications or any other applications for that matter in one VM that could take advantage of scanning, it could take advantage of monitoring, provisioning other VMs that are operating in the system. But through the use of some virtualization techniques, there are ways that this effort can be done better and faster and more comprehensively. In effect, I'm suggesting there are some things, there are these items here that I'll be speaking about cannot be done today, or cannot be done as effectively today without as they can be with virtualization. So stealth monitoring, by definition, applications running in this external VM would not have the access to the VMs that are running here because the boundary, the hard boundary enforcement that is given to a virtual machine. As I said, this VM number 1 is not able to look into VM 2 and modify any of its resources, and same too for VM 2 going into VM 1. Same too for the security VM. But through some memory monitoring techniques, some memory reconstruction, process reconstruction techniques, and interpreting the memory, looking at the raw memory that's going on in the into these target OSs, the security software running external can indeed have some visibility, can indeed know what's going on, and implement some monitoring techniques that are completely stealth in orientation. Certainly the malware and other applications running in the VMs are not able to even see that there is security software monitoring their actions. Just as an aside, one of the insidious operations performed by malware is to go in and first thing when it gets into a system is to actually detect that there is security software running. And it knows McAfee software, it knows Sophos and all of the others. So what it does, it goes and it turns it off. Look down, in fact this happened at an earlier talk, it wasn't quite this way, but it made me think of it. I glanced down at the computer that I was using and the little Wi-Fi light was on. I never have my Wi-Fi on. But a technique that malware software is able to do is go into this operating system and turn on certain ports, turn off certain ports, unbeknownst to the user, such that access can be made into and out of the operating system. That's the same kind of stealth, or that's the kind of monitoring or changes to the system that we can be watching for, and the bad guys don't even know that we're there. So if you don't know that McAfee is watching you, you're not going to try to turn McAfee off. So you'll maybe be a little bit more brazen in your approach to infecting the system. Behavioral stack walking. Watching the computer stack, triggering on the return operations that, again, you can depict either from the out-of-context operation, as shown here in the security OS, or even from in-context, a protected area that your security software is running at within the guest operating system, again, protected by its own internal boundary, is a technique for watching for buffer overflow protection, for watching calling sequences of applications going into the VM monitor and the computer's resources. Fundamentally, watching for abnormalities in a heuristics-based sense is what we have for behavioral detection techniques. So behavioral detection for stack walking, watching the monitor. Watching for API execution and access monitoring, again by those same APIs, by looking at the calling sequences down to the kernel level, to the various libraries and services, is another way that is can be enhanced greatly, and is being enhanced greatly through virtualization, by virtualization doing that type of inspection. Rootkit detection. You've doubtless heard a little bit of some news this past year as announced at Black Hat and DEF CON to security-related conferences this year.